All right, let's dive right in today. We're going to be looking at how to take your English communication skills to the next level, especially for like professional settings. Really fine-tune those phrases that make a difference in how you come across at work.
Yeah, those little subtle language choices that can have a big impact.
Totally. And for this deep dive, we're using a YouTube video as our guide.
Oh, cool.
It's called Speak English Like a Pro by Podcast Speak English. And they break down 25 phrases that can be super helpful for navigating those tricky conversations with your boss or your clients or your colleagues.
It's like a cheat sheet for better communication.
Right. And what's interesting is how a lot of these phrases seem really simple on the surface.
Yeah, you use them all the time.
Exactly. But when you look closer, there are these nuances that can easily trip people up.
Oh, for sure. Like how many times have you debated between saying reach out or get in touch? They seem like the same thing.
Oh, totally. I use those interchangeably all the time.
Well, not quite. Reach out kind of implies that initial attempt to connect, like you're extending a hand.
I see.
But get in touch suggests that communication has actually been established successfully.
So if my boss asked, like, hey, did you reach out to the client about the deadline? They're checking if I, started the conversation, not necessarily if we, had a full discussion.
Exactly. It's subtle but important.
Okay, so, reaching out is making the effort, but getting in touch means you actually connected.
Right. It's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
You wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a light bulb.
Exactly.
So what about checking in versus following up? I feel like I use those interchangeably all the time too, but I bet there's a difference.
There is. Think of it this way. Checking in means you want an update on something.
Okay.
But following up suggests it's like the next step in the communication, maybe even one-sided.
Okay. Yeah.
Like you might check in with your boss weekly about a project, but follow up with a client who hasn't responded to an email.
Gotcha. So checking in is more about getting an update, and following up is more about making sure things are moving forward.
And the interesting thing is how these phrases can even reveal the power dynamics in the situation.
Ooh, tell me more.
You're more likely to check in with your boss, someone you report to, and follow up with someone like a client where you need a response from them.
Whoa, it's like a subtle power play hidden in the language.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's reach out versus get in touch and then check in versus following up. What else does this video break down?
Well, they talk about this pair of words that can be tricky, ask about and inquire about.
I have to admit, I've always thought those were basically the same.
A lot of people do.
But I have a feeling this video is going to prove me wrong.
Well, while they can have a similar meaning, inquire has a more formal tone, making it better for professional emails and stuff.
So instead of saying I'm asking about the status of my order, I should say, I'm inquiring about the status of my order in an email to a company.
Exactly. It just adds a little bit of polish and professionalism, shows you put some thought into it.
Wow, the power of one word.
Right.
Okay, what else? What else is in this reply family?
Well, they go into detail about some common mistakes with reply, like people saying reply me instead of reply to me.
Oh, that one drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's a small but important detail.
It makes you sound so much more professional when you get it right.
And they also talk about this interesting thing with answer to. Like when you say, I answer to name, it implies that this person is higher up than you.
So there's a power dynamic baked into the language itself.
Right. It's fascinating how much meaning we pack into these simple words.
Totally. Okay, what about get back to?
Get back to is definitely more casual, like when you tell a colleague, I'll get back to you as soon as I have an update.
Yeah, it's like a quick and easy way to say, I'm working on it.
Exactly.
So we've got reply, respond, answer, and get back to, all part of this reply family. What's next?
They talk about update and how it can be used in different ways, like provide an update, get an update, or update someone.
Yeah, update is a word I use constantly at work.
Same here. It's interesting how this one word can communicate so many things.
So how does the video recommend using these different forms of update professionally?
Well, they give some great examples of how you might use it in emails, like for availability or payment status.
Oh, yeah, I'll provide an update on my availability for the meeting later today.
Exactly. Or please update me on the status of invoice, #123.
Those are great examples. Simple and to the point.
And that's what it's all about, right? Clear communication.
100%. Okay, now I'm curious about send and forward. I always thought forward was for when you're sending something you received earlier, like an email.
That's definitely the most common way to use it, but it can also just mean send, even if you haven't received the thing before.
Wait, really? So I could say, could you forward me the meeting agenda even if you're the one creating it?
Yeah, exactly. It's subtle, but it shows how versatile forward can be.
So it's not always about what you've received. Sometimes it's just about sending something along.
Exactly.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's all about understanding those little shades of meaning.
It's those nuances that make all the difference in sounding professional and polished.
Okay, I'm ready for the next one. What's next on the list?
They emphasize the importance of using according to when you're referring to a specific source.
Oh yeah, like, according to the project timeline, the deadline is next Friday.
Exactly. It adds credibility and avoids confusion about where the information came from.
It's like you're backing up your statements with evidence.
Precisely.
Okay, so what about this phrase, in regard to? Have we all been using that correctly?
In regard to is all about focusing the conversation on a particular topic, like making sure everyone's on the same page.
Right.
Now, you might have also heard people say in regards to.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I always thought that was wrong, though.
You're technically right. In regard to is grammatically correct, but in regards to is used so often these days that it's almost become acceptable, especially in casual settings.
It's a good reminder that language is always evolving.
It is, but for formal writing, it's always best to stick with in regard to.
Got it. In regard to, for formal. In regards to, for casual.
Pretty much.
All right, what's next? This is fascinating.
They talk about expressing regret and the subtle difference between apologize for and my apologies for.
I'm sensing a pattern here. There are always these subtle differences that I never even noticed.
Well, both phrases convey regret, but my apologies for has a more formal and sincere tone.
So if I mess up on a project, it's better to say, my apologies for the oversight, instead of just, I apologize for the oversight.
Exactly. It shows you're taking ownership and expressing genuine remorse.
It's like choosing the right level of formality for the situation.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about a phrase that's become super common in the workplace.
Oh, I use let me all the time. It's such a quick way to offer help or ask for information.
It's interesting because it's technically informal, but it's totally accepted in professional settings now.
It's like a shortcut for saying, I'm here to help, or I'm on it.
And it shows that you're proactive and willing to take action, which are great qualities to have at work.
It's a little word with a lot of power.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the last phrase they cover in the video?
They talk about look forward to, which is a classic way to end an email.
I definitely use look forward to in like almost every email I send.
Me too. It's a great way to end on a positive note and show that you're excited to continue the conversation.
It just sounds so professional.
And you can use it with or without an explicit subject.
Ooh, like I can say, I look forward to hearing from you, or just looking forward to your response.
Exactly. It works both ways.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, breaking down these phrases we use all the time at work. What's the biggest takeaway for you?
It's amazing how small changes in wording can have a big impact on how we're perceived and how effectively we communicate.
It's like we've unlocked a secret code to better communication.
And the best part is it's not about memorizing a bunch of rules. It's about being more mindful and intentional with our language.
Exactly. And that mindfulness can make all the difference in navigating the crazy world of work.
I couldn't agree more.
So what do you say we take a quick break and come back to explore this even deeper?
Sounds great. I'm excited to keep diving into this.
Awesome. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. I'm really enjoying this deep dive into professional communication.
Me too. It's kind of mind-blowing how we use these phrases all the time, but never really think about the nuances.
It's true. Like, we just say them without realizing how much meaning is packed into those little words.
And what's exciting is that once you understand these subtleties, you can become a much more confident and effective communicator.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's a secret weapon for success.
Totally. You know, it reminds me of the study I read a while back. It found a strong link between using precise language and being seen as more credible.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. People who used more specific and nuanced language were consistently rated as more competent and trustworthy by their peers and bosses.
Makes sense. It's like if you can express yourself clearly and accurately, people assume you're more capable in general.
Right. And the best part about these 25 phrases is that they're not about sounding super formal or using a bunch of jargon.
No, it's not about trying to sound like a walking dictionary.
It's about finding that sweet spot where you sound professional, but still approachable.
Exactly. That balance is becoming even more important in today's workplace.
I've definitely noticed that things are becoming more casual in my office. Like we're moving away from that stiff corporate speak from back in the day.
It's a sign of the times. It shows that companies are valuing collaboration and authenticity more.
Yeah. Speaking of casual communication, remember how the video talked about "let me"? Like how it's so informal but totally accepted in professional contexts now.
Oh, yeah. Let me is a great example of this shift towards more direct and action-oriented communication.
It's like a verbal shortcut for saying, "I'm here to help," or "I'm on it," in a way that sounds friendly and proactive.
And it's way more efficient than saying something like, if you wouldn't mind, I could perhaps take a look at that for you.
Exactly. No one has time for that. So it's not just about choosing the right words. It's also about adapting to how communication is changing in the workplace.
Right. You got to keep your finger on the pulse. One thing you can do is pay attention to the language used around you.
Oh, good point. Like, what phrases do your colleagues and bosses use a lot? What messages are they sending with their words?
It's like being a language detective. You start to notice those hidden meanings and power dynamics.
And the more you notice, the better you'll become at using those same techniques to get your point across effectively.
Exactly. It's about finding your own voice, but also making sure it fits within the communication style of your workplace.
It's like finding the right balance between being yourself and being professional.
Right. And as you get better at this, you'll find that it not only boosts your professional image, but also your confidence.
It's like a positive feedback loop. The better you communicate, the more confident you become and the more successful you'll be.
It all starts with recognizing the power of language and making conscious choices about the words you use.
So for anyone listening, my advice would be to pay close attention to how people are communicating around you.
Yeah, you might be surprised by what you learn. And don't be afraid to experiment with these 25 phrases yourself.
See how they feel, see how people react.
Exactly. You'll quickly figure out what works best for you and helps you reach your goals.
It's all about finding that balance between authenticity and professionalism.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing journey of learning and growing.
And that journey is what keeps things interesting. Professional communication isn't just about following a set of rules. It's dynamic and always changing.
It's a challenge, but also a really rewarding one.
Well said. So, are you ready to move on to the final part of our deep dive?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, we're back. We've uncovered all these cool nuances in how we use English at work. But the big question is, how do we actually use this stuff in real life?
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about it, but another to actually make it a habit.
Exactly. So what's the best way to start incorporating these phrases into our daily communication?
My advice would be to start small. Don't try to change everything at once. Just pick one or two phrases from the video that really resonated with you and focus on using those this week.
Okay, so like instead of saying, "I apologize for the delay," I could try, "My apologies for the delay," and see how it feels.
Exactly. And pay attention to how people react. You might notice that "my apologies" just sounds a bit more sincere, a bit more professional.
And what about those times when I'm not sure which phrase is the right one? Like, should I reach out to a potential client or get in touch?
I think that's where context matters. Remember, reach out implies that first attempt to connect, while get in touch suggests there's already a connection.
Right, so if I've never spoken to this client before, reach out is the way to go.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right phrase for the right situation.
Like choosing the right tool from your toolbox.
And the more you practice, the more natural it will become. You'll develop that instinct for which phrase works best in each situation.
It's funny. It's like we're learning a whole new language, even though it's still English.
I know, right? There's this whole other level to it when you start thinking about these subtle differences.
I read an article recently that was talking about how the language we use at work is almost like its own dialect.
That's a great way to put it. It has its own rules and its own little quirks.
It's like we're code switching between our personal communication style and our professional one.
And the better we get at that code switching, the more easily we can navigate those tricky workplace dynamics.
It's like leveling up our communication game.
Exactly. And each level unlocks new opportunities and new possibilities for success.
So what's the best piece of advice we can give our listeners who are on this journey of becoming better communicators?
I think the most important thing is to be yourself. Don't try to force it or sound like someone you're not.
Because at the end of the day, people can spot inauthenticity a mile away.
Totally. Just focus on being the best and clearest communicator you can be. Let your personality shine through.
To wrap things up, I want to encourage all our listeners to embrace this journey of becoming more effective communicators. It's a process for sure.
It's a journey, not a destination.
But it's so worth it. You'll be amazed at how much of a difference it can make in your career and in your life.
And remember, we're all learning and growing together. And that's what makes communication so fascinating.
Well said. So, that's our deep dive into the world of professional English. Hopefully, you've picked up some useful tips that you can start using right away.
And remember, confident and articulate communication is a superpower. It can open doors and help you achieve amazing things.
We look forward to diving into another interesting topic with you soon. Until then, happy communicating.